Welcome to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we explore the strategies, the insights, and the best practices that help families and their advisors build and manage successful family offices. I am your host, Christi Van Wright, and each episode, we dive into the key elements of running a family office. Whether you're a family looking to structure your advisory team for long-term success, or you're a professional managing the complexities of a multi-generational enterprise. From financial oversight and operational efficiency to selecting the right advisors and creating a lasting legacy, this podcast is here to provide practical guidance and expert perspectives. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Family Office Success Podcast, where we talk all things family office. Today, we are having a conversation with Brian Adams from MAC International. And I think this topic, and Brian in particular, is a timely topic because there are so many family offices and families out there who are looking for assistance in general and or in their family office. And so today's conversation is really meant to give you an idea of what the market looks like, what other people are out there that you can be on the lookout for. Let's face it, no two families are the same. And thus why we have groups like MAC International and people like Brian Adams to help families source and retain those wonderful people to be able to have continuity in your family office. So Brian, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So would you give us a little bit of your background? How did you get to be in the family office industry? And give us just a little snippet into what MAC International does.
Absolutely. So from New York originally, met my wife in college. She's from Nashville. So we did the New England thing for a bit before she, like every Nashville woman, ever wanted to move back home. So I've been here in Tennessee for 20 years. I have a background as an attorney and was a real estate investor before joining MAC, which we'll get into. And my wife's family has a family office here. And so she's the oldest member of G2. When I joined the family board as an ex officio member, I got engaged in this whole world, which I had no idea existed, through our CIO and my father-in-law, who's the principal and patriarch of the family. And that's how I originally met Linda, probably 15, 16 years ago. And then more recently joined her as a partner. We're a small independent boutique firm, so we do executive search for single-family offices. So families hire us to help them find C-suite professionals. Most of our work is in that CEO, president, chief investment officer, chief financial officer, general counsel, COO world. And we work across the country. Linda started the business 23 years ago out of Chicago. She's in Palm Beach. But we have folks in New York and Dallas, but we work across the whole U.S. and everything from first generation de novo, first hire of a newly formed family office, all the way through, we just finished a search for a family with their 8th generation and everything in between.
Wow, that's amazing. You have a lot of experience finding these folks, placing on behalf of families.
Yeah, Linda has more than I do, but we've been doing it for a long time. And the way that we do search is very, very much in a consultation mode. So we get very deeply engaged with the family. We do holistic 360 assessments. And then, obviously that's the day job, but part and parcel with that is this deep networking and building an ecosystem of folks like yourself, right? Family office service providers, trusted advisors, different third parties, different counterparties. So very deeply ingrained in that whole space.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. I've been in this space 10 or 12 years, and it really is quite small when you get down to it. We know each other for the most part, and I find that networking is really a huge benefit to our families because you can find the folks or the services that you're looking for, but you have to be in it and spending time in that network and cultivating that. So
yeah, it's a cliche, but it's a trust business and it's a very small world in search. When we triangulate on candidates or back channel or diligence folks, it's growing, but it's a small space.
Still a small space. So a lot of our families have an entrepreneurial background. What makes hiring for your family office different from hiring inside of a corporate environment?
So the biggest piece would be fundamentally, it's a bit of an odd job because structurally, you will never be the boss. Just because you'll never
Sure.
be the principal, you'll never be a family member. And so it takes
Right.
a certain type of person who's gravitated towards service orientation, servant leadership. They wake up in
Mm-hmm.
the morning and that's what motivates and drives them is to help other people execute on their visions and plans. And that's not the right fit for a lot of people that want to be the ultimate decision maker or have struggles in terms of their motivations. And take investments, for example. Many people just want to be incentivized to hit a certain return. In the family space, as you know, success looks more holistic, as in, sure, we want to grow the corpus and be able to maintain our quality of life. But if that comes at the sacrifice of not being able to have Thanksgiving together, what's the point? Some people really struggle with that type of perspective when it comes to how they want to work day to day. But when you find the right person, they can be incredible. But it does take a different type of personality. And as you know, even in big families, there's no job too small. These are typically lean operations. And if the principal calls you and says, I need XYZ, you just say, yes, I'll figure it out.
That's right.
Not many people can operate in that world.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I tell everyone who I bring onto our staff or that I'm looking at hiring, we're effectively in the hospitality. We're a blend between the hospitality and the service industry, and you have to have a
Hmm.
servant heart, I think, to do this work and to do it well for a family because they're like you said, their goals are they're different goals, and you have to be willing to push those goals forward no matter what they really are. So as you mentioned, a lot of these family offices are lean. They run lean, which is not a bad thing, but it does tend to create this, a little bit of, I don't know if cognitive dissonance is the right word, but you do wear so many hats. And so how have you seen sort of this evolution of the family office role or roles? Do you see that becoming more streamlined, more business-like, where there's you have the family and then you have maybe a COO and a CIO, and are you seeing it to becoming more streamlined, or are you seeing it sort of across the board that it's still we wear all the hats. Maybe there's a one thing that we definitely own, but we're still sort of a team of one, everyone doing a little bit of everything. Have you seen any changes in the industry for good or for bad?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a truth to this concept that the trend is towards professionalization and institutionalization generally. I think there's a knowledge that these families have become of a scale and complexity where they require that type of formality. That being said, they're almost always under resourced in some form or fashion, right? I mean, even families that allocate a lot of time and money towards their family offices, they're not profit centers, they're not
Sure.
revenue generative. And so there's always some sense of we could be doing more or you've got to do more with less. And I think just fundamentally, the type of people that do well in these roles and those environments are creative, thoughtful, proactive, strategic, and they like solving problems and they like being puzzle solvers because the reality is, your stakeholders, it's going to be hard for them to justify giving you everything you need to operate. So there's always going to be some constraints there, and you just have to feel
Mm.
comfortable with figuring it out.
Right. Okay. Are you seeing just generally across the board, are you seeing more family offices talking about this professionalizing the family office using outsource professional services for things that, traditionally they kept in-house, or are you seeing family offices try to bring those professional services more in-house? Is there a direction that those seem to be going in?
Yeah, this buy versus build conversation is ongoing with all these families. And I think that's one of the benefits of having an internal CEO or president or trusted advisor, whatever you call him or her. But I think somebody that can have a really sober, neutral, arm's length approach of saying, okay, is bill pay something we should be doing in house or should we externalize it? Do we need to be doing tax prep, even investments, everything, right? Just having a second set of eyes on all those decisions. I'd say there's a couple of trends that we're seeing. One, this hyper specialization of professional and financial services is becoming a real challenge for families recruiting wise, which is lending itself towards outsourcing many of those functions because if you need somebody that has deep expertise in partnership accounting and the lender structure, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be hard to find that person walking around the street that can also, that you can afford to bring in house. And so you're seeing a lot of outsourced services around that. I think certainly concierge lifestyle management is something that can be a real challenge for families to scale beyond one or two generations. Technology, cybersecurity, things where investor reporting, GL, things where the world is changing really quickly and there are big advantages there. I think you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing outsourced models. But when families do a really deep assessment of, the rationale behind starting these family offices, typically it's confidentiality, discretion, control, customization. And so
Sure.
for those subject matters where they really have high conviction, that's what they want to do. And that's the problem they're solving. Even if it is costly, internalizing them still makes a lot of sense because ultimately that was the why behind starting the platform to begin with.
Sure. So, two questions. Well, first one, are you seeing for the families that are choosing, they're making the determination in-source versus outsource, buy versus build. Are you seeing that model work, generally speaking?
Sometimes,
Sometimes.
I think, like I referenced earlier, you're going to sacrifice something. And so, what we always advise families to do is if it's a de novo startup family office or a multi generational family that's been in existence for a while, and you're doing a reassessment or a reevaluation, the first thing you want to do is confirm who the clients are, which seems like a simple thing, but I think many families, when you ask them, well, is it just lineal descendants? Is it significant others? Are there other stakeholders just because they were part of the operating company or you just really want to take care of them? Who the clients are and what the
Mhm.
scope of services are to be provided. There's a lot of models out there. It could be holistic, full service, everything from lifestyle, concierge estate management, all the way up through taxes, accounting, investing, everything in between, what the scope of services are, and then kind of that buy versus build analysis across all of it. And then increasingly, families are looking at their family office as a standalone business enterprise. So having its own budget, its own P&L, assessing it as a net neutral proposition, potentially a loss leader if they want to give the money away eventually. Or sometimes they want to be able to, this isn't common, but have some type of profit associated with it where they can maybe have a profits interest share to employees or key staff, key executives, or to be able to generate a dividend or distribution off of the family office itself. I think all of those things come into play. And I do think the industry, similar to kind of your platform, is responding to the market and creating really good third party options out there. But I just think it's a constant evaluation for these families. They're always, it seems like, going back and forth between internal and external options.
Yeah. There's definitely, I know certainly, obviously, we are what would be considered an outsourced provider for families and family offices. And I can absolutely empathize with the build it, bring it in, and have it all in house and have full control versus having the outsourced provider because there's a lot of work that goes into both, of course, but certainly on the outsourced side, you need that central person to really make that work. And it feels like when families come onto our platform and there's a little bit of, I don't know if tension's the right word, but concern, or, they've done it before, but it hasn't really worked. I feel like for the most part, I can usually point back to there wasn't a centralized person or a centralized source of information that could push everything forward and could keep what I call that flywheel of information moving. And that's really what created the challenge, because if a family doesn't have that, they by default are that person. And they just don't always know that. And so I want to come back to this COO, CFO person, because it does feel very much like you can make a lot of things work if you've got that core person. So, what does it take for a family to source that person? And, what are they, if a family's concept is we're going to have this person in house potentially, what does that look like for that role?
It's really competitive. And the way I describe it is kind of this Swiss cheese effect where, you need to find somebody who has the technical skills, right? So they need to be able to have the subject matter expertise or the foundational background in order to do the work. They need to be the right culture fit, which is very challenging to find somebody, like we referenced earlier, the service orientation, but also just social, political, character, personality, energy level.
Right.
Those are hard, right? And that matters a lot. Who's going to fit within your culture, your broader family culture. And then you've got smaller things, but important in terms of, are they located in your backyard? Can you pay them enough? Do they want to move? Is the timing right? And so you've got all these things that need to line up. And many families increasingly want somebody with 20 years of family office experience and 20 years of runway, for lack of a better term. And that's directionally kind of people my age. Not a lot of us around, right? I mean, there just aren't a huge number of people that have that type of experience that are willing to relocate if necessary. And so that's why you're seeing compensation go up, frankly, is it's just a supply and demand issue. And laying over that is this massive generational turnover in leadership that you're seeing occur in family offices, where somebody's been in the seat for 20 or 30 years, they want to go to the beach, and it's just very challenging to be able to have enough people to backfill those folks.
Yeah, without question. We've actually have started receiving more calls than typical over the last several years, specifically for family offices who don't have a backfill option. And some of those calls are someone on our staff, something just happened and I'm going to call it forced retirement for whatever reason, and they don't have a replacement solution, or they recognize that there's about to be a retirement, or they want to retire, but they don't feel like they can because there's not someone to step in for them to tell all of the things that most likely aren't written down anywhere and documented. And so they don't feel like they can, and everybody feels a little bit stuck.
Yeah, we see this very often where we call it kind of title creep or role kind of scope creep. Somebody that was brought on to be the CFO 25 years ago, when they're retiring or they're set to retire, and we do an audit, like, tell me your role, remit, responsibility, what's your mandate, what do you do every day, how to allocate your time.
Yeah.
The family realizes this person's been doing 3 different jobs. They've been the CFO, the CIO, and they're acting as, the trustee for the majority of the entities. We need to hire 3 people instead of 1 because they've just been in the seat so long. They just were given the work, right? And over time, they just get more and more work. That's definitely a big trend that we're seeing as well.
Yes. I find I also have families who are surprised when they do have those conversations, not only at how much work that role has taken on over the years, but that they do need multiple people to do that same role. I have seen families go the opposite way where they say,
well, this person's been doing all three roles. Let's just hire one person. They'll just step right into their shoes. But the reality is because they've been doing it for so long, it's second nature to them. And they probably even created the roles over time. And so to expect one person to be able to come in and take all three of those roles over and do it to the same extent, I feel like there's maybe some missed expectations on
Unicorn
that one.
hunting. Yeah.
It is absolutely unicorn hunting.
It is
Really.
very challenging. And I think that's part of our job is to help manage expectations because it can be hard for them to digest that reality of, well,
Mhm.
Susan did all these things for 30 years and she was great. Well, think about Susan 30 years ago. She was a young public accounting associate who you recruited. And then over 30 years, she was given all kinds of opportunities and experience. That's just not realistic unless you want to pay a really big number.
Right.
Most people don't want to do that. So then it becomes a function of, okay, and this is kind of what we call like Santa's wish list. If it's 10 out of 10, well, what are the most important three things that we need to make sure we get right? And then
Yeah.
let's find an athlete who, through external supplemental support or some fractional resources, can help get there over time. But what are the things that you really care about right now? And that's hard because I think families often think, well, my acute pain point is tax prep or something, and I understand, but is that long term who you need in the seat? Probably not. And so
Right.
that's a lot of the conversations we have with families of how to think through the hiring and the right profile to bring in, not just today, but in 10 years.
Long term. Yeah. It's funny when I talk to families about how we onboard and the role that White River plays in their families. And the reason that we do our onboarding the way we do is because we start with one scope of service, and that is usually the pain point. Those are the things that they are trying to figure out how to not make them not painful. But by the time we are through our onboarding process, almost without fail, the scope of service is 30 to 50% different than where we started, because usually those pain points in the beginning, they really can be handled pretty once you understand them, you can handle them and you can figure out the process, you can fix it and you can move on. And then all of the other things start coming out, which I suspect is another one of the reasons why, following up on this entire conversation of finding the right person and how hard that is truly in real life, because you have to be this athlete, this corporate athlete, this family office athlete, to be able to keep up with and be flexible enough to move and change with what the family's needs and goals, quite frankly.
It's a hard job. And I think what we often see is people talk about technology, and there's some great outsourced external fractional resources, such as yourself. Ultimately, what it does is it does help defray the cost, and it gives families a lot of flexibility and optionality, and it increases the responsibility to the C-suite executives, because what used to be maybe 2 or 3 direct reports, it now could be 5 or 10 different liaison third parties reporting into 1 or 2 people.
Right.
And so it just means that senior level executive has more to deal with, has more data to aggregate, and has a bigger strategic role to play because they don't have as much support internally as they used to. That's definitely what we're seeing play out right now.
That makes sense. So I know you can't, it is very difficult to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway and let you answer it as you see fit. If a family is looking for this role, what should they expect, or what salary range generally would they maybe should not be surprised if somebody came back with, or you were doing a hiring search for this role? Help us set some expectations for what this person looks like.
Yeah, what Linda always says is we don't make the market, we bring the market to you. And so the family tells us, obviously we talk a lot about compensation expectations and ranges, and we never want to have a search that we can execute on and be successful with, given the family, what they're hoping to achieve and what their budget constraints are. But it's competitive and these people are expensive. And you are now competing with venture capital, private equity, investment banking, wealth management, asset management. Those firms are competing for this type of talent. I mean, if you want somebody who's a really seasoned executive that has what we say is the big levers are usually investment, right? So if you want somebody with direct investing experience and acumen and has the ability to access those type of deals and execute on those type of direct investing roles, and then tax strategy, estate planning, really strategic CFOs, those are usually the big levers. And then you tack in experience. But again, I'm very hesitant to put numbers out here, but the $1 million mark is not uncommon these days for somebody who has a 10 out of 10 for what these families are looking for. It's competitive.
I mean, you're right. At this point in the world, those folks can go to the big banks, they can go private equity, they can go venture, they do have a lot of opportunities and options. And like you said, you're never going to be the top in this industry. You're always going to be working with a family.
We always advise families, especially because that number is a big number, and I totally understand. Especially if they've been out of the market for 20 or 30 years, it can be hard for them to digest that. A couple of things. One, I think the compensation surveys can be helpful. They do a good job of directionally giving you a sense of the market. When you read them as a family, I would think, okay, well, this is helpful, but then don't get so focused on one price point, because would you want a 25th percentile player running your family office? Probably not, right? You'd want somebody who's a 75 percentile player. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other is return on investment as opposed to just a cost. So if you think about human talent and the ability for, say, a really strategic CFO to put into place a lender structure, a PTC, some advanced estate planning techniques that save you tens, if not more, millions of dollars.
Right.
In a 25-year look back, that's a really good spend on that person, right? So these really strategic, thoughtful people who can get you into the right investments, save you the right amount of, mitigation of tax liabilities, it can be a really good allocation of capital. You just have to maybe shift a little bit of how you think.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and appreciate that was not exactly a fair question to ask. But it is one of the things I think that hearing the number, though it, understandably is large potentially, having the expectation of going in when someone is reaching out to you to find this person or people to fill this family office or to replace a retiring family office personnel, it is important for families to understand that this is a competitive business all the way around, no matter what position that you're looking for. And you don't want the 25th percentile person in your family office. I would argue you don't want them doing your bookkeeping. You don't want them really doing anything. You've done well, and you've done well for a reason. And now's probably not the time to decide that you don't want to spend a lot of money, when the reality is it can be the difference of continuity for your family's wealth over generations, having the right team, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So very good. Well, Brian, I have to say thank you so much for this conversation. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. If someone is looking to reach out, how can they find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been great. I'm really active on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way is look me up on LinkedIn, shoot me a note. I'm very responsive. You can go to the website, macinternational.com, find out more information, but always happy to talk.
Perfect. We will also link to your LinkedIn and to your website in our show notes. So
Perfect.
Thank you again for joining me today. I really appreciate it and wish you happy hunting.
Thanks, Christy.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining me today on the Family Office Success Podcast. I hope you found this conversation insightful and valuable as you navigate the complexities of family office services. If you're looking for more ideas or resources or want to explore how we can support your family office or your family through services and training and strategy, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at whiteriverconsultants.com, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates and expert insights. And if you're ready to take your family office to the next level, consider joining our mastermind where we can help you manage that chaos and create better outcomes for the families you serve. Until next time, I'm Christi Van Wright, and this has been the Family Office Success Podcast. Take care and keep building for the future.